What's going on, guys? It's the RPO College Football Podcast, and we are back. I'm your humble host, Jerome Jones. I got my man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ray Roberts. How you doing, Ray?
I'm good, Jerome. How are you?
I am glad and happy. This week was amazing. We had the NFL draft. I was able to watch the whole entire thing, every pick, all through it. Got to see a lot of the players that we interview get drafted and see their dreams come to reality. It was very cool and special. Talk to some of those guys, so that was really cool and special. But Ray, how was your draft experience?
It was excellent, man. Like every year, really. I mean, as long as like you said, as long as I get to sit there and watch my players get taken, and watch as everything unfolds. And this is a lot of movement around, teams moving around, so it's pretty good.
Yeah. As always, every year the NFL draft is like Christmas to us. We can't wait to open those presents. I just wish they didn't take so long in the first round, man. It took like a whole 30 minutes before the pick started. I'm like, guys, what are we doing here? It was playing. There was a concert, and they started talking, and then when they actually started, you had to wait till the actual pick was in. I'm like, dude, we all know who the first pick is. Just pick the pick in. Let's just start at 8:00. Don't give us this concert or whatever. Like, that's all that concert stuff that's good for the people that's at the festival. Do that earlier. But like when it's time for the draft, us out there watching on TV, we want to see the draft. We don't care about no concert. We want to see the draft.
I agree 100%. I think that really the concert kind of stuff is like for the fringe fans. It really they don't even pay attention to the draft. They kind of just sit there and listen to what's going on. You know what I mean? So
I agree.
But, I mean, it was good. So.
But again, it was, I can't complain too much because, last year with the pandemic and everything like that, everything had to be virtual. And as much as grateful we were to still have a draft last year, it's a lot better when, you have a draft when everybody's present and it's the whole old style, and you see the fans get excited, the players get excited, going on the stage and celebrate with their fans and stuff like that. It's different when you don't get to see that. It's all digital. So this year was definitely a lot better than last year, obviously, but still, let's just get to the draft, man. We don't want any other fluff. So speaking of fluff, we're gonna get right into the draft discussion here for ourselves. We're gonna talk about the first round today. Just go right through there, go through each pick. Me and Ray's gonna give our opinions on that. Let's get right into it, Ray. Obviously, the first two picks, we're gonna go right through those because those were mocked by everybody and their moms and their grandmoms and their grandmas. So it was Trevor Lawrence going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like I said, everybody knew it was gonna happen. They should have just picked the pick in. That pick should have been in a week earlier, and everybody should already know. I know back in the days they did that where, the player were already signed to the team like a week before when they definitely knew who it was. So I think they should have did the same thing now. Trevor Lawrence already was preparing to go to Jacksonville. They were doing the donations to him and everything like that to Jacksonville. So everybody knew that was going to happen. Zach Wilson was maybe a little bit tossed up. It could have been some kind of change up there, but for the most part, we all knew Zach Wilson was going to be number 2. So real quick with the first two picks, any surprises, anything you were suspecting, maybe something different last minute, Ray, or clear cut?
No, I mean, I've been pretty much on board with the same thing. I mean, I expected Trevor Lawrence. I expected Zach Wilson too. I don't necessarily know if it was a great move or not, but we'll see. I mean, I know they have a whole new coaching staff and everything in now, different GM. So, I mean, I should say not different DGM, but Joe Thomas, has been here since last year, right? Their GM.
Yeah.
And so, I just think that, like, they just wanted to turn the page on what the old team was and turn it to a new team. But
they already traded Sam Darnold, so obviously they're going to get a quarterback right there. Zach Wilson was the guy for like at least a month, like probably more than that, a month. We already know Trevor Lawrence was the guy since the draft process But when we knew Jacksonville Jaguars was number one, that's when we knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be number one. So that wasn't anything different for anybody. I think that those two picks was clear cut, and everybody knew.
I honestly think that people after last year knew that Trevor Lawrence was the number one pick this year. So
yeah, for sure. It was just a matter of was it Jacksonville or the Jets. So
right.
All right, let's go to the third pick. This pick might have caught some people off guard. I was hearing this pick a little early on, and I kind of figured it might have been either this guy or Justin Fields, but it was Trey Lance going to San Fran from North Dakota State. Ray, what do you think about this pick? Was this the best pick you think for the organization?
I think honestly, that Trey Lance is a very talented player. I think you could have went with him or Justin Fields here. I honestly don't think it was ever going to be Mac Jones. I think that was all just smoke teams are putting out there, so you weren't exactly sure who they were going to take.
Correct. I 100% agree. I never thought it was going to be Mac Jones. Nothing against Mac Jones. I don't hate him. I didn't think he was going to be I didn't think he was a quarterback that should have been that high. I know, Ray, you think otherwise with him. But Trey Lance was my fourth quarterback. I thought it should have been Justin Fields. But again, with Justin Fields, with the epilepsy announcement, I think that scared teams away just a little bit. But either one of those quarterbacks would have been fine with me. I think both of them need time to develop. I think this is a team that you can develop a quarterback since they have Jimmy G. Mm-hmm. But I think Justin Fields is a little bit more NFL ready right now than Trey Lance. But I like Trey Lance's upside. What do you think, Ray?
I like Trey Lance's upside. I mean, I just wish he would have played this year. I think him not playing this year kind of is what put him in that we're not sure exactly thing, because really, if you look at, he plays in a more pro-style offense than Justin Fields does. So, but I think, like, again, athletically, Fields is a little bit quicker, a little smaller. Lance is a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, but both good athletes. Both would have probably fit in the system that San Francisco is going to try to use. I just think that you went for the higher upside. That's all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Trey Lance have a better upside, while Justin Fields have a better is pro ready right now. So, but we'll get to Justin Fields a little bit later on, because he does get drafted in the first round. Later on, let's get to the fourth pick, which is the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I think that there was a lot of discussion that there was going to take Kyle Pitts at this point. But I think that some people might have thought they would have went quarterback, maybe offensive line. Ray, what do you think about this pick for Atlanta Falcons?
Well, I mean, I think that Kyle Pitts is a top 5 player in the draft. So that he win here doesn't surprise me. I'm a little surprised they didn't take a quarterback. But I guess they're going to try to reload and give Matt Ryan one more shot at maybe going to the Super Bowl.
Definitely. I agree with that. I think that they're in kind of a win-now situation, even though I believe that they should have went defense. And we talked about this in our mock draft that, if they were going to go defense here, they would have to trade back. I think they picked the best player, possibly the best player or second best, third best player in the draft. There's some debate between him and Chase. But they got the best player that they could. They load up a lot of offensive weapons. So maybe, even if the defense cannot stop anybody, the offense have a lot of firepower where they can score quickly. Kind of like the Chiefs when they first started. They have the greatest defense, but their offense could score at will where they could keep up with teams.
The one thing that strained them taking Kyle Pitts was that they hired the offensive coordinator from Tennessee as their head coach, and Tennessee played more 12 personnel than any team in the league last year. So, I mean, that made sense. So
definitely. We got our first comment. Facebook user says, as an Eagles fan, I could not be more happy, excited about the Devontae. It is Devontae. I keep saying Devontae. It's Devontae. I feel like a steal. We are going to get to that pick, so we're going to get to that Facebook user, I'm gonna go find out who you were and your name and the Facebook thing as well. But let's get to our next pick, which we just aforementioned. Chase Young went to the Jamar Chase. Sorry, not Chase Young, Jamar Chase. He went to the Cincinnati Bengals at 4 to Cincinnati. Ray, how do you feel about the pick? Because a lot of people was like, hey man, I think they should go offensive line. I was on the offensive line board. It might have been a little, me wanting Chase to go to the Eagles, but they went with Chase instead of protecting Joe Brady. What do you think about this situation, Ray?
I think it was a mistake. I think that he's a good player, but I think that you had a quarterback that played behind a bad offensive line last year. It didn't turn out well, and you had a chance to get maybe the second or third best player in this draft, and he's an offensive lineman. He's been a dominant. He's been a dominant offensive lineman for 2.5 years now, and I just think that when we get into who won the loss of draft this first round later on, I'll go into more detail. I think it was a mistake. Not that Jamar Chase is not a good football player. He is. He's going to be very good. But your quarterback can't get the ball to the wide receiver if he's on his back.
100%. 100%. And my thing is that your quarterback just came off an injury.
Right.
Your offensive line wasn't good. They was the second most set team in the NFL, I think, behind the Eagles. And you have good weapons. You had Tyler Boyd. You have T. Higgins, who showed a lot of promise last year. I forgot the other kid's name, the other guy, the receiver's name. He's a good slot receiver, I think, for them. So I think you got good receivers. You could have got another receiver later in the draft, in a deep draft year. I don't think you needed to get Chase. I get the chemistry between him and his old quarterback. That's great and fine and dandy. But you got to protect the guy that just got injured. I mean, you don't want him on his back, and you don't want him because if he gets injured again, who's throwing to Chase Young now? You get what I'm saying? So that's my whole thought about it.
Here's the other thing. Now, in the second round, they drafted Jackson Carman, who's an offensive guard. So what is that going to do for you? This is why, what we always talk about, like the pick. And what bothers me more about it is when you make a mistake or as what I perceive as a mistake, and then it forces you to make a mistake in the next round. And then sometimes even the next round after that. So, I mean, again, Jamar Chase is going to be a good football player. Is he going to be an impact player this year? No, not like Penei Sewell would have been.
I 100% agree with that. But we're going to get to our next pick, which is your Miami Dolphins. They got Jalen Waddle. I thought that Jalen Waddle was a phenomenal pick for you guys. I really do like it. Penei Sewell was arguably the next best pick they could have got. I feel like your offensive line is solid. I think you have a good offensive line. You didn't even a wide receiver, but I will say y'all did just get what's his name from Texas? The wide receiver from Texas.
Oh well, he's in yeah.
Oh, Ray, you forgot his name too?
He's killing me.
Man. Yeah. But we'll get to it. But I think they're a little bit similar. I just think that the guy I got from Tennessee, and if anybody want to go in the chat room and tell me his name because I can't think of it right now.
Well, as soon as I'm thinking about come right to me.
Right? But he gets injured a lot, so I do get that. Ray, what do you think about this pick?
I like Jalen Waddle. I think he's a good football player, as you know. And when we did our mock draft, not the last time before that, I actually had him going fairly early. I think people were a little surprised. I actually had him going to the Eagles, and people were a little surprised. I mean, schematically, he's a perfect fit. He'll help me with special teams. It's great. It's a good pick. Did part of me want them to take Penei Sewell? Absolutely. Yeah. So honestly, anybody who didn't take Penei Sewell after pick 3 probably made a mistake to me. So
I agree. Penei Sewell was there. I mean, Penei Sewell was a guy, and Remy's asking you about the pick. Like we said, we think that this is a good pick. I think we both agreed this is a good pick. Penei Sewell was there for the taking. Do do you rather protect your quarterback? I think yes. I mean, even Remy says offensive guard over receiver needs first. I 100% agree with that. You need to bolster up that offensive line first, then go receiver. Because if you can't get to that receiver, you know, your quarterback's gonna get hit. You know, he's not gonna be able to, especially with a speedy guy like Jalen Waddle. I mean, Chase is a little bit more intermediate route, so you can get the ball out faster to him. But like for guys like Waddle, they're more vertical receivers that you need to get the ball out and have time to give it out to them.
Now, I will say this though: Miami did draft the 3 offensive linemen last year that all played. So, and they did kind of address the right tackle spot later in the draft. So it's not a complete blink. And honestly, schematically, he fits perfectly. They needed a vertical threat, a guy that can run crossers and take the top off the defense a little bit, and be that underneath guy who Waddle was probably going to play in the slot. And again, we were talking before we got on here, me and you. I can't wait to see how they use him. I can't. So
yeah, for sure. And the chemistry between the receiver and the quarterback. I mean, even though he thought that Mac Jones was a better quarterback, but I don't remember if that was him or Smith that said that.
It was Devontae Smith. Will Fuller is the receiver that Miami signed.
Will Fuller. I know.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, think about that, though. You went from a team with no speed outside. Now you got Will Fuller running vertical routes, and this guy running underneath of him.
And you still got Parker.
And you still got Devontae Parker, who's one of the better possession receivers, and Mike Gesicki. So you went from having a subpar offensive skill players to having a nice group of receivers right now. So again, I don't hate the pick, but part of me did want Penei Sewell. I'm not gonna lie about it.
100% agree with that. I understand that. And speaking of Penei Sewell was the next pick. He went to the Lions. I personally think that the Lions couldn't go wrong with anybody that got there. They was gonna get a top tier player no matter what. Penei Sewell was the perfect pick for me. As soon as I seen he didn't go to Miami, I was like, Lions, you have to get Penei Sewell. They got him. There's a guy that can, they don't have. I don't know how to feel about Jared Goff, but if they had to go into a season next year where they thinking about drafting another quarterback, they got somebody stable in there to protect them already. What do you think about that, Ray?
I think it's a great pick. We'll get into we're going to get into what teams we thought really had a good first round later on. I think you termed it as winners and losers in the drafts. Well, I'll let you know, Detroit is one of my winners for that first pick. They had a good draft, and they got a franchise, like a guy who's I hate the term that they use for, I forget exactly what it is, I forget it. But anyway, he's a great offensive lineman, and he's going to help them right away. So I think it's a great pick. So, I mean, I love it. So
100% agree. 100% agree. Let's get to the next pick. It's the Carolina Panthers, and they picked the first pick that really hurt my heart. Like, the Jamar Chase thing hurt my heart because, I love Chase for all last year before even he got drafted. And I said I would love the Eagles to get him. We wasn't able to get him this year, especially after the Eagles traded back. I was like, all right, I accept the fact that we're probably not going to get Chase now. But this pick really hurt me because I thought the Eagles was going to get him, and we didn't. It was J.C. Horn. I thought he was going to slip down to about the Eagles spot, but he went very, very early to the Carolina Panthers. I absolutely love this pick. I absolutely love it. I feel like he's a perfect fit for that defense. They got a really young defense. They're going to keep building off that young defense, and I think, they have a nucleus now. They have Jeremy Chin. They just got J.C. Horn. They have Derek Brown from a couple years ago. Well, last year they got Brian Burns from a couple years ago. They're really building that defense, right? What do you think about this pick?
I love the JC. I like JC Horn a lot. I think it's a good pick. To me, they could have went this way, or they could have went with Patrick Surtain. Either way, I'd have thought they had a good pick there. So, and the term I was looking for is generational talent. I hate that term, but that's Penei Sewell is that guy. If there's one guy in this draft, he's that guy. So,
100% agree. I think that J.C. Horn fits a little bit better for me than Patrick Surtain. Don't get me wrong. I think Patrick Surtain is the better cornerback, but I feel like J.C. Horn fits this defense a little bit more.
Well, I do too because Carolina is one of them teams where where they play some man, they play some zone, and I think that Patrick Surtain is more of a man press cover corner. Not that Horn can't do that, but he can do both, and he's like a guy like Surtain wants to play in your kitchen all the time. Well, Horn will like lay off you a little bit and think you have that yard on him, and he'll jump the route.
Yeah.
So I think either way you could have went with either guy, but I think Horn maybe fits their defense a little bit better, and that's probably why they took him.
I agree. I agree. And speaking of Patrick Surtain, he went right after that one to the Denver Broncos. Now, a lot was playing that the Denver Broncos might have got a quarterback here, might have got a linebacker in Michael Parsons. But they went corner when they just kind of revamped their cornerback spot, so then they got another corner in there. Ray, what do you think about this pick?
I think that honestly, if it were me, I may have taken a quarterback there, but again, they got a good football player who's going to help their defense out, and they're pretty good up front still in Denver. So I could see them wanting to get a corner that can help out too. So there's many routes they could have went. I think Denver's actually not a horrible roster. I think they have more talent on the team. That's why I think that maybe I may have thought about the quarterback because I think that maybe that's more of a need for them. But again, they got a good player, and he's going to help out their defense. So
100% agree, right? I just think that since they just got Teddy Bridgewater, they already have they want to see what he got in those quarterbacks, and I think they're going to have that kind of competition between those two, which gave them the freedom to get a player like Surtain. Now, we talked about this in one of our mock drafts that I thought the Denver Broncos could still get a cornerback because they got Ronald Darby on the other side, and as an Eagles fan and seeing him play, I do not trust that guy as a corner. Now he is a good number. He's a solid number two for a team if you have a good number one. They got was it Boye they got? No, they just got Boye.
Yeah.
Boy, I forgot who they got. It was Boye they got?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So Surtain is better than both of them corners. I mean,
well, I think like you said, I think that now Surtain can take on the role and as the number one guy, and these other guys will probably round up to where they should be. So
100% agree with that. All right. Next pick, my Philadelphia Eagles trade a divisional rival, the Cowboys. You trade the Cowboys, which at first I was like, why would you ever trade the Cowboys? And it actually took me a minute to get over that, to be honest. But we did trade up 2 spots, give away a 3rd round pick, and the Eagles finally got a number 1 receiver, Deontay Smith from Alabama. Ray, what do you think about this pick?
I think that it was a smart move. I think it was like I was talking to some guys earlier today at work, and they were like, well, that was a no-brainer. Yeah, it was a no-brainer, but they still had to get in the position because I think if they wouldn't have, the Giants would have jumped on him. So I like Devontae Smith. I think he's a very good football player, and he's going to help out the Eagles. And now what it does more than that is it lets the other, again, with the Eagles, now lets the other guys come into their 2nd and 3rd roles, which is probably where they should be now.
Exactly. 100% agree with that, Ray. My take on it was, like I said, at first, I didn't like the trade at first. I'm starting to come around to it a little bit more now because if you would have sat there at 12 and allowed the Giants to get Deontay Smith, who are we going to pick at that point? I think that was the best case scenario pick that we could have, because after that, it was either we're going to take Justin Fields or we're going to, pick Cutie Pay, which I don't think at that pick you pick him. And there wasn't another pick.
I mean, I like Kwity Paye, but I don't consider him a top 15 player. But if I were going, if they wouldn't have done that, I would have probably saw them take like Rashawn Slater, But again, the Eagles need multiple players. So they got a number one receiver, and like I said, that probably was the best case scenario. And I think if they wouldn't have gotten a number one receiver, the fans would have went crazy. So
yeah, exactly. And I don't think there could have been any other better spot for him. I mean, everybody that they were speculating the Eagles to get, it was Jalen Waddle, it was Chase, it was Pitts, it was all those guys already went. Then it was the cornerbacks, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain. They both of them went. So the only best player there that you probably could have gotten in that area was Deontay Smith. And with that scenario being there, I thought the Eagles did the right thing, go up 2 spots. Yes, they had to get a 3rd round pick to the Cowboys. Yes, it was kind of rich, but you got the best player there, and I think that was the best player to be in the top 10 in that area right there. There was nobody else, I think, in my opinion. Everybody else could have just slid in whatever slots, but that was the best player in my opinion.
I think Devontae Smith has been like depending on who you talk to, I think the receivers could have went in any kind of order, no matter what. The first 3, the Eagles landed on their feet. They got one of the best receivers in the draft. A guy, like I said, a guy who probably is already the best route runner on your team. And now these other guys can step into secondary roles, which kind of fits everything together.
I 100% agree. All right, and then let's get to our next pick. So the Chicago Bears traded up. They traded the New York Giants. The New York Giants figured, hey, we didn't get the guy that we wanted. We got jumped. Let's trade back, get another guy we like in the 1st round pick. I don't care whatever you Giants fans say. Y'all wanted Deontay Smith right there. Don't lie, because if y'all didn't, y'all want to trade back. But anyway, they traded back to the Bears, and they got Justin Fields at quarterback. Ray, what do you feel about this pick?
I think that the Bears did a smart thing. I mean, I think that maybe I don't know exactly what they gave up to get Justin Fields, but I think that they
give up first round next year also. First round, I think like a 4th round this year.
You know what? Honestly, if they could turn the page after getting rid of Mr. Trubisky, it was well worth it. I mean, because we all know that their quarterback situation has been bad for a while. And this kind of takes the egg off their face after missing out on quarterbacks a few years ago. And I like Justin Fields. I think he's a talented athlete. I think he has a big upside as a quarterback. I think that, again, they found a way to get back up in the top 10, 11, 12 to get the quarterback they needed. So they did a good job.
Ray, we're going to talk about best fits or who the winner is. Yeah. I think this is the best situation they could have did. Justin Fields, they got Justin Fields. They only had Andy Dalton and Nick Foles on their roster, which, again, I'm a huge Nick Foles fan. I don't think he's a starter. I don't think Andy Dalton's a starter. Guys that were fringe starters, backup kind of guys. And to have Justin Fields in there, now he can kind of sit for a couple of games, let Andy Dalton do his things. Maybe they might switch in him and Nick Foles, do whatever they're doing, but they finally got a franchise guy. They don't have to rush him in like they did Trubisky. And I think it's a perfect situation for Justin Fields, in my opinion.
Yep, absolutely.
And finally gave my guy Allen Robinson a quarterback. Thank you. He finally. My man been struggling without one. He haven't had one all his career. He finally gets one now, so I'm super excited about him. All right, let's go to our next pick. The Dallas Cowboys select Micah Parsons. Ray, how do you feel about this one?
I think it's a good pick. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, well, how is Dallas going to use him? It doesn't matter. Micah Parsons is a top 5 or 6 player in this draft. They found a way to get him. I mean, they're going to use him. They're going to use him fine. And I think that Dallas is a weird team to evaluate, though, man, because they seem like they have talent, but they don't play like they have a lot of talent. So it's hard. Yeah. I think Micah Parsons was a good player. I think they were lucky to get him in that spot, to be honest with you. But I think, again, I think Micah Parsons is good, so I'll say it was a good pick. I'm just a little, I like all these guys. I'm just, anxious to see how they're going to be used them. You know what I mean? So
I agree, Ray. And I think that it's just, for me, it was kind of a head-scratching in a way because they have the reason why I think it's head scratching, if they would stay in the 3-4, that would make sense to me. But they're going in a 4-3 now, which means that one of those linebackers are not going to be on the well. They can have all three on the field, but when they go in a dime package, what are going to keep Parsons in? Or I don't think any of them are great at coverage, so I think it's kind of weird in that sense. And also, and we'll talk about this later on because there's another draft pick that he got later on that was like, all right, what are your guys on? But I just think it's kind of weird that they switched to a from a 3-4 to a 4-3, and then packing up on line. Usually, it's the opposite when you go, the 4-3 to 3-4. You usually start packing linebackers because you substitute linebackers for edge rushers. I think if they would stay in the 3-4, Margaret Parsons would have been a perfect pick right there. But I just think it's kind of odd because of their defensive scheme, right? What do you think about that?
I think that you could use him in a lot of different fronts, though. I mean, he could play outside as that fourth defensive end sometimes. And I just think to me, honestly, Jerome, he's too good of a player to pass up. I do think that. I think yes, if in perfect case scenarios he plays in a 3-4 and you let him do a little bit of everything, which is probably what he's going to want to do. But you could play him anywhere on your defense as a linebacker. You could play him as a Mike or as a Will or as a Sam, and he's going to be a player no matter where you put him. There are issues about him being a little immature, and we'll see how that works out for him. And again, my only fear is, Dallas seems to not really know what they want to do with their guys once they get them on the field. But again, a talented player. I wanted Miami to take him. I wanted him to maybe move up back up from their 18th pick to get him, but it didn't happen. So I think Dallas got a good player. Again, I agree with you in a little bit. I don't know exactly how they're going to use him, so that kind of scares me or has me a little bit apprehensive about it. But you put good football players on the field, and you let the other thing take care of itself. So.
I agree with that. That's a good point. You put that right there, Ray. All right, let's go to our next pick. We got the LA Chargers. They picked Sean Slater. I think this is a home run pick because he probably shouldn't have went to 13 to them. Everybody thought he was going to be in the top 10. Ray, what do you think about this pick?
I think the Chargers need offensive line help, and they got one of the better versatile offensive linemen. It kind of depends. Like you could play this guy anywhere. I think he's more of a guard than a tackle, but he has some versatility. And again, unlike Cincinnati, who didn't address the offensive line after struggling there last year, they went ahead and got somebody who's going to be a good player for them for a while. So I think it's a good pick. I
agree. All right. Let's get to our next pick. We got the New York Jets. They got I love Vera Tucker from the guard from USA. They traded up to get him. Ray, how do you feel about that pick?
I like Elijah Vera Tucker. I think he's a good football player. I think that was a little early for him, and I would not have traded up to get him. I would have hoped that either he fell to me, or honestly, if you look at 23, they traded with Minnesota. Minnesota took Christian Darrisaw. Now I think Vera Tucker is a little bit better fit because they could play the kid they took last year, a left tackle, and play him at left guard and be good there for a very long time. But I would have not have given up draft capital to make that move. But again, they got a good football player. But I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, and like we praise Joe Douglas, all the time. I think he's a really good GM. I think that, like you said, the fact that they traded up to get him, like if they would have just sat there, I forgot where what position they had. I think it was like 18 or 19 or something like that. But I think that what was it?
23.
23. Oh yeah. It might not get him, but this was such a rich offensive line draft, and you've seen that in the second round where almost every pick was getting offensive lineman. We'll talk about that in a future podcast. But for them to trade up so many spots to get this guy. Yeah, I know the sentiment of getting the guy you like, and if you see him there and you staring at him, go get him. But this is such a rich offensive line draft. It was a little bit too much for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, I like the kid. I think he's a good player. I just don't think that I would have moved up to take an offensive guard. That's all.
I agree. Let's get to our next pick. We got the New England Patriots. They got Mac Jones. Fell right to them at 15. A lot of people predicted this might happen, and it happened, and they actually picked Mac Jones. What do you think about this pick, Ray?
I've said it before. I don't think Mac Jones is a first round quarterback. But like we said last year during our mock draft, I think that if I were him, this is where I would have wanted to go. But I think that, honestly, we'll get into this later. If I was New England, I would have tried to trade up and get Justin Fields. But that's just what I would have done.
With that, I think this was like the best spot for Mac Jones. I don't think that it was too high or too rich either. I think this was perfect. I think this was like just the spot where if he fell there and New England Patriots on the board and they liked him enough, I think they should have took the pick. Which they did. Go ahead, Ray.
I just have a problem with guys that were rated as fourth and third round players. And now all of a sudden I'm taking them in the top 15. But again, that's just me.
Yeah. I don't think Mac Jones was a horrible quarterback. I didn't have him that low on my board.
I don't think he's a horrible quarterback either. I think that when you take a guy in the top 15, it's like Ryan Tannehill with Miami at 9. Well, you put a lot of pressure on that guy to get on the field now. And is he going to be that? I don't know. I mean, he's in a good spot because maybe he could just sit behind Cam Newton. But you know what's going to happen. They start out and they struggle a little bit. The fans are going to want him on the field. They're not going to want – if Cam comes back and plays better than he did last year, then maybe they'll be okay. But if he plays like he did last year, the fans are going to want him on the field, man. And that's going to be a hard spot for him because, let's face it, New England doesn't have a lot of talent. I mean, they did address a lot of needs during the offseason, but who are their wide receivers?
Yeah. I agree with that, Ray. All right, so let's kind of go through this a little bit faster.
You got it.
We got Arizona. They've taken Xavier Collins. I think that was a very odd pick for me. Ray, what do you think about that?
I like Xavier Collins. I wouldn't have taken him in the top 15, but I'm not surprised. In the top 20, but I'm not surprised Arizona did because I think they were looking and hoping that Micah Parsons would fall to them because they do need defensive help in Arizona. And Xavier Collins is very versatile. He's not quite as versatile as Patrick Surtain, but I had heard for about a week that if Parsons wasn't there, that they were going to probably take him. So it's a solid pick. The kid will play. You can play him as an outside edge guy in a 3-4 or 4-3. He's versatile. He's pretty athletic. He's a big kid. He didn't play of course, he played at Tulsa, so he's not from a big program. So people didn't get to see him a lot, but I had been watching the kid play for 2 years, and he's very good. So not surprised, but not it's not one of my favorite picks either. So
and that's exactly how I felt. I just think that the better pick would probably have been getting a cornerback. They lost Patrick Peterson.
Right.
And I think they needed somebody kind of to replace him. So I think a great Newsome would have been great right there. But I mean, I don't know. Xavier Collins, he wasn't my best linebacker either. And I thought there was better linebackers out there too. But I mean, hey, if they like him for their system, I think that's
I think the other guys like a Nick Molden, who they could have taken, was probably more of an inside guy where they think he's more where Xavier is a little bit more versatile. You could play him as a Will and a Sam and even a Mike if you really wanted to, even though he's not done that yet. But I think he's versatile. He's a big kid. He's 6'5", 260 pounds. So I think they looked at him as the guy they targeted. And again, I think it's a good solid pick. A little early for me. I wouldn't have taken him. I really thought he was going to go like from 20 to 25. But hey, we'll see.
Definitely. All right, next pick. The Las Vegas Raiders. They pick Alex Leatherwood with the 17th overall pick. Ray, how do you feel about that pick?
Worst pick of the first round.
The
worst pick of the first round.
Yeah, I didn't understand the pick. I understand they need offensive line. I mean, don't get me wrong. Their offensive line is really bad coming into this. They needed somebody there. I think that was a reach, Ray.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't understand. I think that I like their GM. Mike Mayock is a really smart football evaluator. I think he wanted to get an offensive lineman. I would have taken Christian Darrisaw, but I understand that he took his guy. So
yeah,
I had Leatherwood as a late second, early third round pick. So again, I think they reached on him. But hey, man, we'll see.
Yeah, I just think Mayock be reaching on guys because he falls in love with them, which could be a problem. I don't know. I don't want to judge Mayock because again, like I said, we all love Mike Mayock for what he did on NFL Network and his situations in the draft and stuff like that. But sometimes when you're in that GM spot, it's different, man. You think a little bit differently because you're in the hot spot now. You're not just making mock drafts and you can afford to be wrong. Now you're in the GM spot and you're in more pressure. So maybe he feel like he has to get his guys. That kind of. I don't know, but let's move along. This next pick, I am super proud of because I actually mocked him to your Miami Dolphins at 18, and when it happened, laughed at me, and I was like, I think this is a good spot, and it happened in real life. Jalen Phillips going to the Miami Dolphins at 18. Ray, we talked about this when it actually happened live. I asked you about it. How do you feel about this pick, Ray?
My favorite pick of the first round. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying it was the best pick in the first round. My favorite pick in the first round. I mean, we talked about Miami's earlier pick. I like Waddle. I think schematically he was a perfect. Yeah. Jalen Phillips is going to be that guy that allows their defense to go to the next level. I truly believe that.
Yeah, he's a little raw. Don't get me wrong.
He is.
He's gonna take time to get in there, but I think he is one of those guys where you put him in and you teach him, and that defense where it's already a stacked defense and they did really well last year. I think that you guys are going to really enjoy him on that edge out there.
I think that Miami's going to play a lot of three. They're going to play a lot of 3-4 fronts, and then what he does is he allows them to switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3, and he's athletic enough to play some off-ball linebacker. So I think, again, this kid was handpicked to go to Miami Dolphins, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if not for the concussions that he had before he transferred to Miami, he's a top 5 player.
I agree. All right, let's get to our next pick. We got the Washington football team on the board, and they picked my personal favorite pick of this draft, which is Jamin Davis. Inside the Hatches interview, we got the interview him a few weeks before the draft. Really good guy. I think this is personally my favorite pick.
Are you there, Jerome? I guess not. Don't know. All right. Well, I don't know if anybody can hear me out there or not, but I'm going to continue and see if I can get a hold of Jerome here. Let me see what happens. But as we're doing that, if everybody can hear me, you can send in any questions or anything you may have. Let me know if you're hearing me or not. I don't know that, but I want to go through a couple more of these picks while I'm waiting for him. As Jerome was saying, I like Jamin Davis too. If Arizona would have taken Jamin Davis and Zaven Collins would have went in this spot, I probably would have felt a little bit more comfortable about what Arizona did. I think Davis is a very athletic kid, really talented athlete who can do a lot of different versatile things, but again, I'm not always crazy about taking linebackers unless I can think they could be like difference makers. I think he will be. I don't know if he'll be right now this year, but I think eventually he will be. So I'm fine with the Jamin Davis pick. I'm going to go on to the Kadarius Toney, the Giants. I like Kadarius Toney. I think that he's a good player. I think that the Giants took him a little early. I probably wouldn't have went in that direction. I probably would have went with a Rashad Bateman at this point. But again, they got a guy who's a versatile slot type of guy who could do some things outside. I wouldn't have went with Kadarius Toney here. I thought he was more of a like 25 or so after that. But again, I mean, they wanted a receiver. They got a receiver. I think he'll play. He'll do a good job. Next at 21, we have Kwity Paye, went to the Indianapolis Colts. I like the Colts. I think they're a good team. I think they're well coached. I think Kwity Paye is a good football player. He's a versatile player. I can see him playing some strong side defensive end where he has a heavy-handed kid who has a lot of potential as a run player. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the greatest pass rusher. But I think he's a good football player, and he'll do some nice things there in Indianapolis. Next, I have Tennessee Titans taking Caleb Farley. I think that Farley is a good football player. I think that his injuries, his back issues, have me a little concerned about how well or how good of a player he's going to be this year. If he gets healthy, though, it'll be a good solid pick. For right now, I wouldn't have taken Farley in the first round. I said this during our mock draft last week. I would not have taken him in the first round. But again, they're going to, it's the thing about the draft is it's up to these teams now to make these players work. I am a Dolphins fan, which everybody kind of knows, but I get frustrated when I see a player get drafted and I'm like, well, how are they going to use this guy? And then the season comes and they realize they have no idea how to use this guy. So that's where I get frustrated. But I think Kwity Paye is going to be good. Farley's going to be a good player as long as he can get healthy. After that, I had Minnesota taking Christian Darrisaw, who was my second top offensive tackle in this draft. So I think obviously that's a good pick there. And number 23, he's going to be a good, solid pass protector, a good big body guy who can maul guys in the run game. I like Christian Darrisaw. He is a guy who lunges every once in a while where he'll miss a block. So that's a little bit concerning. But again, that's coaching. Coach him better, he'll be a better player. After that, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Najee Harris. When we get into best players, teams that won in the first round, I think this is a great pick. I think it's a good player. And there was a lot of talk about Miami taking him in the first round at 18. If they had the 24th pick, I would have loved jumping on Najee Harris. But the fact that Pittsburgh did it, he's a very good football player. He fits Pittsburgh's scheme absolutely perfectly. They're a power running team. This is a kid that breaks tackles, can get out in the open, can make plays, can catch the ball well enough where he can be a nice check down option to Ben Roethlisberger. So I think it's a good pick, and I think he's a very good football player. And number 25, We have Jacksonville taking Travis Etienne. I think Etienne is a good football player too. I think this is a good solid pick. I don't understand why Jackson. If I was Jacksonville, I probably would have traded down and tried to get more picks here. I like Travis Etienne, and I understand you wanted to put him with his quarterback, and they'll make some things happen for you, and they will. Etienne's going to be a good football player, and he's going to do a good job for you. I may have went a different route. That's all. After that, you got Cleveland Browns taking Greg Newsome. I think that this is a great pick. I like Greg Newsome. I think if I were Tennessee, I probably would have went with Greg Newsome there at 22 instead of taking Caleb Farley. But I like Greg Newsome. And Cleveland is another team. Every year they seem to put good, solid draft picks together, and that's why they're an up-and-coming team. I kid around the Browns because I remember from when I was a kid, and that's a long time ago now. They've always been that team where they're almost there, but I think they're there. I think they were very well coached last year for the first time in a long time. I think they have a talented roster, and I think that he fits their defense and he fits their team pretty well. Baltimore at 27 took Rashad Bateman. My number 3 or 4 wide receiver, depending on if I want a guy outside or inside. I like Rashad Bateman. I think he's a talented player. He's a good route runner. He's a fairly physical kid with great hands. I think he's a very good pick. At number 8, we have the New Orleans Saints. If we get a chance to get into who I thought didn't have great first-round picks, I'm not saying that Peyton Turner is not a good football player. I think he can be a good football player, but I had him as a second-round player, maybe early third. I think it's a little bit of a reach for New Orleans. It's funny, the one guy, Jack, we have on the podcast through the draft is a Saints fan, and he was really upset that I took a defensive lineman for them in last week's mock draft. Well, apparently they saw things a little bit more similar to what I saw, that they thought they should take a defensive lineman instead of a corner, even though the cornerback class is still pretty good. It's a little thin in first-round talent, though, after the other guys went. But I honestly may have leaned towards the next pick, 29. Green Bay took Eric Stokes, who I like from Georgia. He's more of a zone type of a player. He's not extremely physical, but he's a good, solid football player. But I probably would have went with him there. So Jerome did just message me. He's not going to make it back today, so I'm going to finish up the show. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the draft. I have 3 more picks. I got Buffalo Bills taking Gregory Rousseau, who honestly I like Gregory Rousseau. Me and Jacob, who are going back and forth, he's not as big on him as I am. I think Gregory Rousseau, like people say, well, he played against, the weaker defensive line. Weaker offensive lineman, but that's good coaching. You put your best defensive lineman against a mismatch. That's what you do with defensive ends. Gregory Rousseau, as far as I'm concerned, as far as edge rushers, as a pass rusher, except for Jalen Phillips, has the best upside of anybody in this draft. So I think Buffalo got a good football player at a great spot. So I'm just happy for him. I'm not happy he went to the Buffalo Bills because I'm a Dolphins fan, but I think they did a smart thing and they made a good pick. Now, number 31 is Baltimore Ravens. They took Jason Oweh from Penn State. Again, they drafted him on upside because he had no sacks last year. I like Oweh. I think he's a very good athlete. But I have a problem with teams taking guys that are or taking guys on just athletic upside. I like to see production too. And he's a good football player, and I root for him. My dad is a big Penn State fan. I'm hoping that he turns out to be a good pick. But I don't know if he is or not. But we'll find out, this coming season. Number 32 as Tampa Bay. And the rich just get richer. Tampa Bay needed an interior lineman that can come in here and play some on the edge and give him maybe some pass rush underneath on third and long. And they got Joe Tryon from Washington. good football player. I think it's a very good pick. I think that again, Tampa Bay fit in need, so they did what they had to do. And I like Tryon. I think he's a good football player, and I'm not surprised to see him go at the end of the first round. I had him going the end of the first, early, maybe like between 31 and 35, 36, depending on what Miami did in the first round. I wouldn't mind them taking him at 36 instead of taking the safety they took. But that's all we're going to do this week, I think, because again, Jerome's out. He's not doing anything. He's not able to get back on. Something happened. I think he had something go wrong with his computer. So that's all we're going to do this week. We just went through the first round. We gave you everybody. He had wanted us to go through some stuff with what teams we thought really did. You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. Instead of doing that, we're not going to go through just Miami. I'm going to go through the teams I thought really hit big in the first round. Number one, the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles did a smart thing by getting a receiver that they needed on their roster and by moving up a couple of spots. Yes, trading with the Dallas Cowboys, but it is what it is. They did a good job of getting him. And these are the teams that I thought won in the first round. And then I'm going to go over the teams that I thought didn't do so great in the first round. My second team is, and actually the Eagles were my second team. My first team is Detroit Lions. They drafted Penei Sewell. They got a top 2 or 3 players in the draft. They needed offensive linemen. They need to build in the trenches. They have Dan Campbell as their coach this year. I think he's a guy who wants to win in the trenches. He wants physical, athletic football players, and he got maybe the most physically athletic gift of an offensive tackle in Penei Sewell. I already went over Devontae Smith with the Eagles. Excellent spot. Good pick. My third winner is the Chicago Bears. They hopefully entered this revolving door of quarterbacks they've had since Jim McMahon, to be honest with you. They have not had a winning quarterback. I mean, they had a couple good years, and I forget the kid's name who played quarterback for them 1 year when they were good. They actually played against the Eagles, but he was not a franchise quarterback. I think Devontae, he will be. I think Justin Fields will be. I think he's a good football player. I think they needed to move on from the mistakes they made in the past. So Justin Fields landed to them. Number 4, I had Dallas Cowboys. Again, I think they got a top 6 or 7 talent. Again, it's up to them to make it work. This is how I feel about all coaches. I don't always agree with who they pick, especially with me being a Dolphins fan. I almost never agree with everybody they take. But the difference is I have faith in Brian Flores that he'll make it work. But I got to have faith that Micah Parsons is a good enough player where whatever Dallas does with him, they're going to try to make it work. So my number 5 is Jalen Phillips. Miami won when Jalen Phillips fell to them. I really thought maybe they would move up to try to get him because I think schematically he's a guy who can put his head in the dirt. He can rush off the edge. He can drop in coverage, shading coverage in the flat to medium. I think he's a good football player. I think it's a great pick for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm excited to see what he does. And then number 6, I had Pittsburgh. They got Najee Harris. They needed a power to add to their running back room to give them that power running game that Pittsburgh has always been known for. So he did it. So good, kudos to them. Great pick, good player. We'll see. Again, let's make it work, Pittsburgh. You're going to need to protect Ben Roethlisberger because the guy is a statue right now. Still a good, solid player, but a statue. So that's the top 6 I have for teams that I think won the first round. Now, the teams that I thought lost in the first round, me and Jerome went through this when we went through the first round. I think Cincinnati blew it. I like Jamar Chase. I think he's a good football player. Excuse me. I think it was a mistake taking him over Penei Sewell. We've talked about that before. I think it was just a mistake. Anytime you have a franchise quarterback on your team, if you don't,
it's going all right.
There you go. Have you been listening?
Yeah, you're doing a great job, man. I'm listening to you over here. So my computer died, so this is not professional. I apologize for everybody, but I am listening to you, Ray. You're doing a great job of doing this. So I'm going to allow you to finish up, and then we're going to close out the podcast.
You got it, man. So I did my winners, and I'll recap them for you. I don't know if you heard me or not, but I had Detroit with Penei Sewell, Eagles with Devontae Smith, Chicago with just Justin Fields, Dallas with Micah Parsons, Miami with Jalen Phillips, and Pittsburgh with Najee Harris. They're the teams that I felt addressed needs in the first round and got the guys that they really needed. Okay. Now, these are my 6 teams. I gave 6 on both sides. My 6 teams that I didn't, not that they didn't take good players, that I think they could have done something differently and helped out their roster a little bit. One was Cincinnati taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. I think me and you talked about that earlier about what they didn't do right there. Oakland Raider or the Las Vegas Raiders taking Alex Leatherwood, who to me was a end of second round, early third round talent. They just reached way too high for him. He's a good football player, and again, it's up to the coaches to make it work. And I think he'll be a good football player. But when you draft, you have to draft on the upside. Alex Leatherwood is a nice, serviceable offensive lineman. He's never going to be special. And I think Tristan Darrisaw has a chance to be elite. I don't think he does. Again, my opinion, we'll see how it shakes out. The one thing I will say, when I evaluate offensive, defensive linemen, I usually do good with them positions. Yeah. The skill players are always up in the grab because it's up to the defensive and offensive coordinators to make good with them players. But offensive and defensive linemen, I usually do a pretty good job with. Third is the Jets with Vera Tucker. Not that he's not going to be a good player. That move up to get an interior offensive lineman to me is a mistake. Again, my opinion. Number 4 is Tennessee Titans, Caleb Farley. I like Farley. His injury concerns had me not taking him in the first round. Again, I wouldn't have done that. I would have taken Greg Newsome in that spot. I would have. But again, that's going to be up to them to make it work now because they did it. So the Saints, again, Peyton Turner, nice athlete, nice. Yeah, exactly. Nice athlete, has some upside as a pass rusher. He's a run player, though. And you took him, you reached. You should have taken a corner there. We talked about it last week. I think I mentioned earlier that what's his name? Now his name is escaping me again. Jack was upset that I took a defensive lineman. At least I took a premier edge rusher as a defensive lineman. I didn't take this guy. So I would have taken a cornerback there. Again, I forget who I had. I would have taken Eric Stokes there from Georgia, a cornerback from Georgia, before I would have taken Peyton. So again, that's 100%. Me. And my last one is New England. I'm not a Mac Jones fan, and that's not going to change for me. And here's what, again, we talked earlier about. I think Mac Jones landed in a good spot for himself. He did. And I'm not saying Bill Belichick won't make it work. If it were me, I would have tried to get up and get Justin Fields and made my offense better. That's all.
100%. Before we get off, Ray, once again, I want to apologize to everybody. I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm using this from my cell phone. So if it looks weird, that's what's going on right now. I'm using this from my cell phone. But let's get to 2 comments real quick, and then I want to end up on my what I was saying before I got cut off. Real quick, Darren Braxton is a huge Raiders fan. He said, "What's your thoughts on the Ravens' first-round picks?" I personally think that they did the best thing they could have getting Rashad Bateman. Ray, what do you think about that?
I went over Rashad Bateman. I think he's really, after them first 4 receivers that we talked about, he would have been my next guy. I like Rashad Bateman. He's a good, solid route runner. He's a somewhat physical kid. He's got solid speed. Actually ran a 4.39, which I think would really surprise people. But what I love about him best is he has great hands, man. He doesn't miss anything. So Baltimore needed a guy like that to make their other receivers work. So I think that's a great pick.
Definitely. Next comment was Johnny Dean. What's up, Johnny? Thank you for getting on. You're always a great commenter. He says that Jerome was killing it during the draft. I was getting a lot right. I predicted a lot. The only thing, as much as I was hitting on this draft, what my predictions were, the one thing that I was mad that I didn't get was the 8 cornerbacks in the top 40 because all those offensive linemen was getting drafted. I think if it wasn't for that, I would have definitely had it. I missed it by like 7 picks. It was 7 picks. It was the 8th corner went 27th. I forgot who it was exactly, but I was like this close. I don't know if Ray, if you heard that that comment I had, but it was I predicted my hot take was a 8 cornerbacks, and it was in the other podcast, but I predicted 8 cornerbacks going in the first 40 picks, and I missed it by 7 picks. So
Okay.
I was really close with that one. That was the only one I was worried about, and I just missed it. So that was cool to see that, though. Johnny also says that the 49ers took the right quarterback. I definitely agree with that. They could have went. I think Justin Fields, the Justin Fields the better player now, but Trey Lance had the better upside, and he has a chance to sit behind somebody. So I thought that was a good pick as well.
Here's the best thing about it. Them kids are both athletic, and they're going to help out with the running game. If you take Mac Jones there, he's not running the ball.
Yeah.
So you're not helping your running game out at all. So I just don't. And they're a
running the ball.
Right. I mean, they're a team that likes to run the read option. They like to spread things out a little bit, and they run multiple fronts. I mean, if you ask me, that is why the Rams made the move with Goff. Goff is a pocket passer, and they wanted a guy that can get out of the pocket and make plays. And they got Matt Stafford, and I think that Justin Fields and Trey Lance are the same type of a player. Not only can you run the ball with them, they can take it and run it on their own, and then just give you. When you have them guys on the field, that end can't crash down. He has to stay outside. He has to. When you have Jared Goff, just go get the quarterback.
Exactly. You
know what I mean? So,
yeah, that last comment was surprised that Bolton and Cox dropped. Definitely agree with that. We're going to talk about that a little bit on our next podcast next week. So we're going each podcast we're going to do each day. So today we did day 1. Next week we're going to do day 2, and then the last podcast we're going to do day 3. So we are going to acknowledge that, but yeah, I think that linebackers were going to fall in this draft a little bit, because if you don't have that linebacker that can pretty much do anything, you're not going to pick a linebacker in the first round, which ties me into my last point, which I was talking about before I got cut off with the whole technical issues, was that I think Jamin Davis was a perfect pick for the Washington Redskins. One, you got a coach that coached Luke Kuechly. He brought him into the league. He coached Luke Kuechly. I think that he finally gets a middle linebacker that it will be Luke Kuechly himself, because Luke Kuechly would beat you with his mind more than anything. But I think he's a very athletic linebacker. And 2, you got that front 7. That front 7 is insane. Now you got a fast linebacker. This guy did a 4.43 in his pro day. A 4.43 as a linebacker. This kid is gonna fly around. And the fact that they got that front 7, that's just gonna allow him to move around freely. And Johnny said he loved that pick as well. Dude, I absolutely love that pick. I'm happy for him too, because again, we got to interview him as Inside the Hatches as well. Very good guy. Very passionate about the game of football. So it was super exciting to see him picked. Ray, I didn't hear your take on that, so that was the only pick I didn't hear. What was your take on?
I like Jamin Davis. Honestly, I thought that maybe Arizona would take him instead of saving Zayvon Collins at 16. I did.
Yeah, exactly. That was my problem with Arizona not picking Xavier Collins instead of him, because I think that he would have been a better fit than Xavier there. But I mean, you take your best pick with that. So
I just think Jamin Davis is more athletically, offers you a little bit more than Xavier Collins. Again, if they had taken him at 16, I mean, I'm a front, I'm a front guy. I like linebackers. I like defensive linemen. You have to be surprised when I said that the Saints should have taken a cornerback instead of a defensive end, right?
No, Ray. That wasn't a surprise for me, because I totally agree with that, Ray. Especially the pick that they got, I was just like, Saints, what are you doing?
Hey, but I don't want to get into teams that didn't have good drafts, but I'm going to let people know right now, not to offend Jack at all, the Saints did not have a good draft.
I agree with that, and he was not happy with that pick when they picked him. But
How was he?
that's
Can I ask you this, Jerome? I don't know. You can answer this for me. How did he feel about taking Ian Book in the 4th round?
um if I'm not mistaken, I think he didn't hate it. I think he didn't hate it.
Ian Book
I know.
was almost undraftable for me, and I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Yeah, I know. And I was about to say that you're a Notre Dame fan. I know you did not have high praise for the guy.
I
So
mean, I keep it real, man. He was a 6th or 7th round pick, maybe an undrafted free agent.
mm-hmm.
The kid's a solid athlete with a solid arm. You took him with the 4th round pick. I mean, if he's any more than a backup quarterback, I'll be shocked.
Definitely. And Johnny said that Raiders did nothing to improve either. I wouldn't say that per se, but their picks were definitely head scratching. It was some picks that was just like you could have got somebody else there, or you could have waited for that player, and it was the same. It's been the same thing the last couple of years where it's not necessarily a horrible pick in the player, but where they picked that player, they could have got something else for them. The only one that I didn't really get was the Arnaz that one I didn't get. What is his name? Arnett from Ohio State. I forgot his last name.
The cornerback, the slot corner.
Yeah.
You know what, though, Jerome? If he's not a bad pick. I mean, again, we talked about like you don't want to put him outside, but as a slot corner, the thing I didn't understand. And I like Trevor Mayering that they talked, the safety from TCU. But they're like kind of guys that both guys are going to play inside. I mean, I guess you could play one strong and one and free, but I don't know necessarily if they're great guys to put together. I like both of the players. I just don't know if they fit together. You know what I mean?
I agree. Well, that's going to do it for us today, guys. I want to thank Ray. He did a wonderful job holding it down for me. Again, I was listening while I was trying to figure out my technical issues. So, again, I apologize for everybody. Hopefully, I get this done by tomorrow, hopefully. But thank you guys for listening, man. We had an incredible time talking about this draft. I just wish I was able to stay on, but Ray did a great job holding it down for us while he was in here. So kudos to Ray. If you're in the comment section, please congratulate Ray for his incredible job holding it down while I was out. But guys, thank y'all so much for being in here. Johnny said, great job, guys. See you later. Thank you so much for always being in here, Johnny. Thanks for all our commenters. Thanks for everybody that stuck it in when things didn't go right. I appreciate y'all. Please make sure you go check out InsideTheHatches.com where you can find all our content. We have everything in there. I'm gonna pull up everything right there. There you go. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you find you listen to your podcast. Go in there, listen to a lot of these players. We had Jamie Davis interview right before he went to the draft. So if you're interested in listening to who he is as a person, I really do think he's a great person. Go check out his interview with us. It was a great interview that we had with him. Check that out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Also, you can find it on our website, InsideTheHatches.com, and also make sure you check us out on our social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and especially the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube channel, please make sure you like and subscribe on there. It's going to just help us with the algorithm. We got great content going on. We always have great content as far as college football, NFL football, any other kind of football, high school football. We got it all. Fantasy draft, we have that as well. So make sure you check that out. Inside the Hatches at YouTube or InsideTheHatches.com. I'm your humble host, Jerome Jones. We got Rubbers over here was holding it down for the team. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time.